This session I'm going to take a look at metering. So on the desk there are a number of different things you can do to see the level of the audio as it goes through the various stages of processing. So there are channel meters and mix meters, and there's various different options both on the screen and on the desk. So I'm going to go through those as a way to help you if you need to diagnose problems particularly. It's no substitute for listening, which is what you should be doing in the first instance anyway, but sometimes if there's something particularly difficult to track down, or you've got a particular frequency problem and feedback, or you're not getting any signal somewhere, then the meters can be quite useful aid in doing that. I'll get some music playing, get the band on. So the first thing that's obvious of course is the LEDs to the right of the screen, which is our main metering. So this will typically show whatever you're following on the PAFL. So by default that shows the main front of house if you've got nothing else selected. So as is common with all of the metering, the colours change from green, meaning a colour lower level of audio. Yellow is kind of your expected good range, and then red if it's going into peaking or clipping. So typically you want something in the yellow for the majority of the time if you can, and the meters are all over the different areas will work in a similar way. So at the moment it's on front of house. If I pick an instrument or a vocal, then it will switch to the level on that and adapt accordingly, and it will be, if you're listening on headphones, it will be whatever you hear in headphones as well. So that's the main LEDs. So the next thing to look at will be on channel processing. So if I have a channel selected, as I've got now, and then I look on the summary, you can see very small on the summary here, there's a little level meter here in the preamp section. There are actually, there's one here at the gate, there's one here in the PEQ, and there's one here on the compressor. So we'll go and look at each of those sections. In the preamp section, you've got one level meter. This is the level after the preamp gain. So this is affected by the gain. So if I modify the gain of the trim, then that will affect the level you see on there. So if I increase it, then it goes up into the yellow and the red. If I decrease it, then it reduces down again. If I look at the next section, which is the gate, then you have 2 meters. You've got left, which is the input into that processing section, and the right, which is the output. So at the moment the gate's not on, so they're identical. If I turn the gate on and increase the threshold so that the gate starts to take effect, then you'll see the left is staying as it was, and the right has reduced significantly as the gate is kicking in. Similarly on the PEQ, there's no in, but you have an out. So the out is reflective of any changes you've made on the EQ. So if I make any significant changes on the EQ, then you will see hopefully that the level has been reduced accordingly. On compression, similar to on gate, you've got an in level and an out. So there's no compressor on at the moment, but if I put the compressor on and I adjust the threshold to make the compressor kick in, then you can see the level on the right hand side, the out, is reduced significantly because of the actions of the compressor. So that shows you for each of the channels, inputs and outputs, you've got the same level meters on each of the processing sections. So that gives you a view there at each step through the process as to how they're going. So as well as on screen, you've also got certain indicators on the desk. So the first set of those are the peak indicators around the channel. So while you have a channel selected, you also have access to peak indicators. So we have one here next to the preamp rotary, one here next to the compressor, and one here next to the EQ. So what those indicate is if the channel that you've currently got selected is peaking anywhere in the processing, then the relevant LED will light up red. So for instance, I've got my guitar selected, so if I increase the gain on that sufficiently, then you will start to notice that the little peak lights are lighting up. So that one's lighting up because it's peaking at the preamp section. It's also peaking at the compressor, and it's peaking at the EQ section as well. and the reason for that is it's actually peaking here, which is causing it to peak everywhere else. So if I know that it's there, then I know I need to adjust the preamp. If it was not peaking here but it was peaking here, then it's the compressor that's at fault. If it's only peaking here, then it's probably the EQ that's at fault. So I can adjust that accordingly. So if I've got the channel selected, these three will help me to identify where in the processing the peaking is occurring. So we now look broadly on the desk. Each of the channel faders that you've currently got selected and set up will also have a level indicator on it. So there is what is known as a chromatic level indicator, a little LED that sits at the top of each fader just below the PAFL button. That shows the same colouring as the main LEDs and the screen indicators, but on a single LED. So it's blue if there's no level, green for the lower level, yellow for a kind of a nominal good level, and orange if it's in the top level. There's also above that a little peak indicator, which is a red, which will also indicate if anywhere on that channel is peaking. So again, if I select my guitar and I adjust the preamp up so that it's peaking, you can see the little LED there is lighting up to say something on that channel is peaking. Now whether I've got it selected or not, it will still do that, so I can still see it. Similarly, if something is peaking and I'm not on the layer, then the layer light will light up. So if I was on layer C and something on layer A was peaking, which it is because I've increased the gain, then you can see that the layer A button is flashing red because there's peaking going on. That would help me to identify, well, actually there's a problem on that layer. Select it, I can look across and see, well, it's actually the guitar channel, so I can select that. I can then use the peak indicators on here to work out whereabouts, and I know then I've got to adjust the gain there to address that particular problem. That's on all inputs. It's also on mixes, so in this case the main front of house LR mix has got the same chromatic and peak indicator on it. If I'm on the layer that shows me all of the auxiliaries and groups, those have the same on, so you can see that on any of those where that's going on. So for instance, I've got no FX. If I put some effects on and then I look at my layer, you will see I've got foldbacks, got levels, I've got groups that have got levels, and I've got FX, send and receive that have got levels as well, and that's all being shown on these. So you also have the ability to have what are called RTAs, real-time analyzers. These are a frequency distributed view of the level. So there are a couple of places that you can see that. New now in the current version of the desk software, you can see an RTA on the EQ screen. So if you go to a channel EQ, then there's a little button on the bottom of the screen here that says RTA. If you select that, you get the RTA functions. You can then turn that on, and that gives you a little graph in real time showing you the frequency response for that channel that you're currently looking at. So you've got different options. You've got bar, you've got line, you can have peak or not peak. So you've got different things you can do with that depending on what you want to see. So that's available on all the channels. So that includes mixes. So if I go to the main front of house mix, then on the PEQ for that, I've got RTA for that. What I've also got is the channel mixes that have got a graphic equalizer. I've also got that on the graphic equalizer screen as well. And that on the graphic equalizer screen, it fits the frequencies that the graphic equalizer apply to. Finally, we have a dedicated meter section on the desk as well. So as well as on each channel, you've got the ability to see groups of meters on a single screen. So if we go to the meters section, the meters button just below the screen here, then we have multiple different groups of levels that can be seen in one place. So the first part of that is the input meters. So this is showing the same, similarly as we have for each channel individually, but this is now showing multiple in one go. So I've got, these are all my inputs I'm looking at, so these are the same as on layer A. So I've got vocals, guitar and keyboard. I can see the level indicator, which is a green bar moving up and down there, different for each channel. Keys has got stereo on, and the red bar that's dropping down just to the right of the level is the compressor. So that's actually showing me that I've got a compressor active on that channel. The little dot at the bottom of there, which most of which is grey or not on, is actually the gate indicator. So if I had gating turned on and the gate was active, that would flash red as well. So that would indicate that. I can see that for all my inputs, so I can scroll up and down and see the various inputs on the desk. I can also see the same for the FX channels, so our FX send and receive, all the mixes, so we've got pedestrian loop groups, the foldback groups, and the main left and right. Because I'm using multi-track recording, I can see the levels coming into the desk from my laptop, so the USB input levels here, and the outputs here, which are being sent back to the laptop. We've also got another real-time analyzer available. This time this is following it by default the PAFL, but again it's a similar sort of thing that we saw on the graphic equalizer. Lets me see in another place the frequency analysis. Hopefully that gives you an idea of the metering that's available, and if you have a problem and you need to diagnose something, then it gives you an idea of where to look. Some of this takes some finding your way around, but there's a lot of useful tools in there and they can be quite helpful if you come across a particular problem.